Hello everyone, welcome to this Blender tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to do some sky replacement to go from a blown out white sky to a beautiful blue sky, and all of that inside of Blender. Again, this tutorial is based on an After Effects tutorial from videocopilot.net, and I'll put the link to that in the description. You can find the source footage for the tutorial there as well. Okay, let's head inside of Blender. As you can see, I have already aligned the camera along the Z-axis. I've changed the renderer to the Blender internal render engine. My resolution for the file is set to the video file that I'm gonna use, same resolution, and the frame rate I'll have to set it to 28.98 to match our source video. First of all, in camera view, let me load up our video file as a background image. It is this one. And let me quickly play that back so we can see what we have here. And it ends on frame 66. Set the ending to that frame. And as you can see, we have our video and the sky is purely white and the camera shakes a little bit. So when we want to replace that, we're going to import an image of a blue sky, but since the camera is moving, we'll have to match the camera move. To do that, we go into the movie clip editor, open our movie, and we will do some tracking. Of course, we won't do a complete 3D track from this little camera motion. 3D tracking would be actually quite hard to do. There's not enough motion in there. Instead, we will just create 2 tracking points, because from just one tracking point, we can recreate the up and down and side to side movement. But with a second track, we can actually extract the rotation of the camera, and as you can see, there's a little bit of rotation in the camera going on. Not much, but enough that we have to take care of that. To create a marker, control left click on this point. That's a good point, because things in the foreground, if we would drag this box right here, things in the foreground move much more than things in the background because they are closer to the camera. And because the sky is so far away from the camera, we'll have to match the movement to something that's in the background as well. Let me lock this, the view to the track by pressing L and Control T to track it forward. Let me quickly play back to see if the tracker stays in place, and that looks very good. Now we need a second track, and we could use one of these points, but they are so close to our first tracker that the rotation data wouldn't be so good to extract, because the most ideal case to get the rotation data is 2 points that are really far away from each other on the image and both in the background. Now, right here, we don't have another good point exactly on those mountains, but I think I can use this thing here, this stuff in the ground, and drag this one, and that tracked just fine as well. And that should be enough to extract our camera rotation and movement. Press A 2 times to select both of these trackers, and then under reconstruction, link empty to track. If we change back to 3D view, we can now see we have 2 empties created, and they are exactly on the points of our trackers. Now, how do we extract the rotation from that? If we just would create an image plane and parent that to one of those trackers, the movement would be right, but the rotation wouldn't match up. To copy the rotation, we are going to use a technique that I have learned in a tutorial by Sebastian König. We are going to use to actually create a bone, an armature bone, and that is going to be aligned in a way that it matches, rotates with these 2 tracking points, and then we're going to parent our image plane to that. With Shift S, I've moved the 3D cursor to one of our tracking points. This way, when I press Control A, Shift A, and add a single bone, it will be created automatically at the point where this tracking point is. I select the other tracking point, move the cursor there with Shift S, select our bone, press Tab, and then make sure that only the tip is selected, Shift S, selection to cursor. And now in camera view we can see our bone is perfectly aligned with these 2 tracking points. But of course it isn't matched to the movement of them right now, so we select the bone, Shift right click on our tracking point, the tracking point at the base, press Control P and select object. Now the movement is matched, but if you can see the tip is sliding a bit and not always on the same spot on the other marker. So how do we make the bone always rotate towards that other tracking point? With the bone selected, we change into pose mode, select the bone again, Shift select with right click the other tracking point, and then Control Shift C, and we can select a constraint for this bone, stretch to, and now sorry, this didn't work because I forgot to actually change to pose mode. So when you shift select the empty, make sure to go back to the bone with right click, because otherwise if the empty is what you have actually selected, it goes back to object mode. Again, Control Shift C, stretch to, and now our bone is perfectly aligned with these 2 tracking points. Now it's time to get our image plane. Go back to object mode, File, use the Import Images as Planes add-on. I want to use this one. And if I give it a quick render now, we just see a black box. That's because I have forgotten to change the material of our plane with the sky image to shadeless. And now with the shadeless material we can see works pretty nicely. Another thing I want to change is the render output under shading from sky, here under, at this point, alpha from sky to transparent, and this way we only get our sky image. Let me scale it up and change the view to texture view. And then to align it, I will bring the background image into the front so I can see where our horizon line is. And then simply move my sky image where I want it to be. Maybe scale it up a little bit more because we're gonna have movement. I think that will do. And now if we, with the plane, the image plane selected, shift right click on the bone, Control P, and here make sure that you parent it to the bone and not object. So parent to bone. And now if we play this back, we can see the sky is following the bone and rotating a little bit with it. It's not much rotation, but a little bit. And the sky stays perfectly in place. Now it's time to do some compositing. Change to the node editor. Make sure you are on this node setup here, the middle one. Let's use a backdrop. Give a quick render to get the most current render file. That's our render with the image. Other than that, we need our movie clip. And as usual, we scale it to our render size so it always fits. And now what we need to replace the sky is, since our two characters and due to the camera motion, the shield also and the mountain line will be moving in front of the sky, we need to mask them out. How do we create a mask? Well, as you can see here, the sky is almost completely white and the brightest thing in the image, and that will be the case a lot of times, that the sky is the brightest thing. And you can extract that, the brightest spot, with a luminance key. To show you what that does, the luminance matte turns the image into a black and white image, and if you adjust the low value, you can crush the blacks or you can crush the whites with the high value until you only have the things that you need masked out. As you can see here, right now it masks out the people and keeps the sky, so we need to invert it. Invert the mask, not the image. So, but there's still some problems. As you can see here where the box is, we would kind of have to crush the colors quite a lot to get rid of the box, because the box is quite bright as well. But there's a better way to do that, because the more you crush the colors, the more you risk losing something in the mask that you actually want to keep. So since the box is on the ground, we can just switch to the movie clip editor, change to, first of all, just select one of those tracking points, change to masking mode, create a new mask, call it ground, And control left click creates points of this mask. And with Alt C we can close it. Let me change the handle type for those to vector. It's selecting one of these handles and pressing V. And now I can align this mask so it covers up the ground. And then with the tracking point here still selected, I press Ctrl P. And if I play it back now, I have forgotten something. Right now only this one tracking point follows. I have to press A and now Ctrl P, so all of the masking points will follow our track. And it covers up the ground perfectly. Change back to the node editor. Input our mask, the ground mask. And with the color mix node, with it should be add should work. Now with add, we only have to set our masking values so we make sure. You see, even when we don't crush anything, the ground will be perfectly white. Up there in the sky we have to crush the whites a little bit to get rid of the sky completely. It should do it. And a little bit more on the blacks. I believe that makes for a pretty nice mask. Let us see the result. To use this mask, we use the converter set alpha. We use our original image and this new mask that we've created. And now with color alpha over, connect this to the render output and this to the viewer, and that's not correct. Let's see quickly. There is some color displacement exactly on the right, on the line of our mask. Why is that? Might be because we've used add, and add can lead to values above 1. While screen will make sure that we add the whites up to each other and only it just stops when it reaches 1. Could be, yes, clamping the values at 1 will also do the trick. That's what went wrong here. So now we see we have our sky in the background. But a nice little trick. use color mix and mix it with the original image. And we can get some of the original color with the mix value back into the image. Not much, 0.9 might be enough. So the color spectrum matches up a little bit better. But still we can see we have some problems with our mask. Zoom closer, or even let me quickly go to full resolution, give it a quick render, and we can see there is kind of a white line around one of the actors, and let's see if we can improve the mask. With filter we can make the mask smaller. Let me see what I mean. See, we make the mask smaller a little bit by dilating it, but that will lead to some problems where his hands are. We can change the dilate mode, maybe get that a little bit better, but you see we lose a little bit of his hands right here. So if we add a blur node and bring the blur a bit out again, not too much, we get a little bit of a softer edge around them. Still we seem to lose some detail due to the dilating. Maybe the blur is enough to cover it. Using the feather value seems to work quite nicely to get a slightly feathered out mask around the edges, and that way the blur isn't even necessary anymore. I mean, it still could be better, we still got some little edge around them, but I'm gonna leave it like that for now. But now I notice our sky plane isn't fully at the horizon, so I go back to 3D view and see what happens there. Well, that's strange. It should be of course, that gray line that we saw, because I didn't update the render, and that's why the sky wasn't in the right place. If you click around, see the render of the sky won't update, but if you render it again, it will all be alright. So But there are still some problems. You can see here those trees look pretty ugly. Now we could work around with the mask a bit more, but then we lose even more of the edge around the actors, and I don't want that. So what we can do is go to the movie clip editor and add another mask for the trees. That way we can adjust the let me go to the last frame quickly. That with a mask we can adjust the alpha channel for the trees separately, and then get it back into with the original mask. And I've changed to the last frame because you can see here he gets pretty close to the trees, and we want to make sure that the trees, once again Alt-C to close the mask, and we just want to make sure that the mask that we built for the trees doesn't affect this actor right here. So maybe feather it out, Ctrl-Z, feather it out a little bit, just like so, and select everything. And once again we have our tracking point still selected. We press Ctrl-P, and that way the mask stays in place. And I just noticed I'm not fully white enough. With this in place, we now have our tree line covered completely, and we check back to the node editor. Shift D to duplicate. I want the trees, and I copy this node and copy the blur node. Let me quickly organize that a little bit better. Just like so. And with that we blur the trees quite a bit. And if we now add a color multiply the old mask for our people with those, but only, and here's where our mask for the trees comes in handy. We multiply those two masks together, but only in the area of the trees. And you can see multiply, but add, but once again clamp it so we don't have super whites. Okay. Multiply was the right one. I forgot to switch the Lady Road node from feathering back to distance for what I tried to do. And with that we can see the tree alpha channel is blurry and feathered out much more than the rest of it. Let's see how that works. That is a bit too much feathering maybe. And I'd say that works pretty well. Now the trees get a little bit transparent to the side or to the edge, and we get rid of this ugly, you can still see it here with this tree. So we get rid of the ugly edges around the trees. But since we still have them here, we could improve this even further by animating the mask, and that's what I'm going to do now. Switch to the movie clip editor. On the first frame, make sure you have the automatic keyframing selected. I move this over here. And when he comes too close, I will move it back again. And on the last frame, so now we will have the trees with a nice edge. While our characters are still pretty much separated from the sky. And that's basically how you do sky replacement with Blender. That's all for now. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and have fun with Blender. Goodbye.